Ladies and gentlemen, friends, listeners and colleagues, here we are again. We've got another session on the Pharma Digital event. And as we're going through different players in the relay team and different team dynamics, today we've got two great guests. And I'm going to introduce firstly, Aynur Rzepa. And I certainly hope that's the right pronunciation, Aynur. We know
yeah, correct. Well done.
I've always struggled with that. But thank you very much.
You're not the only one. It's all right. It's quite challenging.
Okay, very good. I feel as if I'm in good company then. So thank you very much for that. And Aynur, just to introduce, you're co-director of Rzepa Consulting, and you specialise in pharma and logistics and training. So we'll get into that shortly. Thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. And we've also got Lewis King, who's director and owner of Albion Aviation, charter brokers. So Lewis, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Nice to be back.
Yep, really appreciate it. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. We had a podcast. We had a podcast with you as well. So yeah, it went down very well, Lewis. So thank you for that. Right, guys. First question to both of you, please, is if you can just give us a little bit of background as to what you specialise in, what you do, and what has the last 6 to 8 months meant to you, done to you? What have your experiences been? So if we start with you, Aynur.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Chris. My pleasure to be on this show, on this podcast. And last 6 to 8 months were very challenging, hard to comprehend, and full of new sort of challenges, and as a result very busy as far as the sector of the industry and market I'm involved with is concerned. And my specialty area is logistics and transportation, air cargo transportation and logistics, the whole supply chain management for pharmaceutical handling as far as the good distribution practices are concerned, with regards to the supply chain management of all involved parties, from trucking companies to freight forwarders, airlines, handling agents, airports, and so on. And the regulatory quality of the nature of the air cargo industry, as well as the regulatory industry, the nature of the pharmaceutical industry, and how strictly both of them are regulated. Finding common touching points is quite a challenge, as both industries have their own priorities. And here, the air cargo industry, I think for the first time in several years now, and especially now with COVID-19 challenge, is really turning towards the customer industry and trying to redesign itself to be able to understand and offer the service which is really relevant to and safe for the healthcare transportation. And we're talking about healthcare that is time and temperature sensitive healthcare, which comprises about quite a small portion of the entire pharmaceutical transportation, but the most valuable part as well.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much. And over to you, Lewis.
Yep, sure. So Albion Aviation Group, aircraft charter company based in Dubai and London. So the core of our activity for the last 9 months has been chartering cargo aircraft and passenger aircraft, simply moving PPE, critical goods. We saw a massive surge kind of March, April, May time, still seeing the transportation of PPE, albeit a lot of transport corridors have caught up, i.e. sea freight. As a side to that, we're also a training institute as well. So we deliver training in aircraft charter brokering. We're one of the only companies in the world to do this. And from that, we have a lot of additional modules that we put together with Aynur, who features in one of them, regards to the vaccine distribution. So yeah, it's been a very busy, challenging 12 months almost now since we started. But we've been pleased that we've been able to kind of contribute to what's going on and kind of really take up the challenges that the industry faces, be it even through the delivery of vaccines or to educating the wider audience on the pandemic and how aircraft chartering can play a role.
Very good, very good. Right, really appreciate it. Now let's go back now. For both of you, earlier on today we did a session, and we had a forwarder, we had a carrier, and we had the GHA, and we were talking to them about upstream, downstream controls and what has to be done. And obviously then we covered areas like, the temperature excursions and issues with ramp and certain climates in certain parts of the world. And we covered all of that. And it was a really, really cohesive. It was very, very positive. And everybody was appreciating the fact that now the supply chain, and especially cargo, is really coming into its own. Everybody wants to know about it. Everybody's interested in it. Everybody wants to see, how are things controlled, etc. So now, Aynur, you've had first-hand experience and you've done lots of audits and training. What do you think is the most positive element of aviation when it comes to dealing with such sensitive cargo as pharmaceuticals, and especially vaccines, and the temperature-related ones at that?
Well, obviously, the biggest advantage of air cargo mode of transportation is the speed and the reachability, and the vast network coverage. And within less than 24 hours, you can get pretty much to most parts of the world, whether with regular flights and freighter passenger flights or a charter flight. So that is something which is the biggest advantage of this mode of transportation. And the increasing expertise of the air cargo participants, be it the airlines, the carriers, and the handling agents, and the airports that create more and more facilities and more awareness and expertise that was lacking so much in the previous years. If we start 10 years back to now, a huge improvement has been made. Making that improvement known to the customer industry is one of the challenges, though. But I think there is a positive shift in how air cargo mode is nowadays considered by the potential customers, and so that is quite a good thing to see. I would see that the network coverage and speed and the advantages, understanding of the supply chain risks as far as pharma is concerned, all come together, makes it quite attractive. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank God it does. Now we've all in the industry we were aware of GDP for forever, and also pharma isn't something that's new to air cargo, so we're all accustomed to it. But now with this additional spotlight of the vaccines, I think one of the areas that was being discussed several years ago about being costly and would there be a return on investment was CEIV. But I think genuinely it's now being received as being that added element, that added extra on top of GDP that focuses specifically with the aviation industry and also with the whole supply chain within that aviation sector. So, I mean, it's a good thing. And that's in my opinion. I'm just interested in yours, Aynur. How do you feel that CEIV has added to what people were already aware of?
Yeah, well, CEIV has started to achieve its main purpose is to identify the compliant and competent supply chain partners out there, identifying them and making them known to the customers as well as to the supply chain partners, so that supply chain partners can choose from the available CEIV certified partners to build the risk-proof supply chains for the benefits of the customer industry and, most importantly, for the benefits of the patient. And CEIV Pharma has been working very hard in bringing the GDP requirements into reality of the air cargo, translating it to the supply chain participants of the air cargo transportation chain, and making them more compliant in delivering those GDP standards, and then making them known to the industry as these are the available partners everyone can choose from.
Yeah.
So it's a very good way of getting to the level and then making yourself known.
Okay, very, very good. Now, Lewis, coming over to yourself. Now, obviously, you started putting out certain training modules, and you're happy to share your knowledge and your company's knowledge with people who either want to learn more or want to specialise. What made you also decide to start putting out some training courses with regards to vaccines and pharma?
Yeah, we just kind of identified a need in the market. You know, these are unprecedented times. And we kind of wanted to run with the theme at Albion to kind of add knowledge, add depth in terms of aircraft charter brokering. So it was kind of like, so what else can we do given what's going on in the world right now? How can we enhance that knowledge, share that knowledge for the benefit of everyone? So we explored different angles, and one of them was, you know, looking at kind of vaccine handling. And that's when we brought Aynur on to really kind of deliver the expertise. And it's been well received so far. You know, we've had a lot of interest. We've conducted a few courses already. But it was just kind of running with the theme where sharing of knowledge, you know, sharing of expertise for the benefit of everyone, to kind of raise that level of education, raise that benchmark, so all stakeholders can benefit, essentially. So it's kind of keeping with the Albion kind of charter code of conduct, you could say, or our mission at least.
Yeah, no, and we spoke about it on our podcast when we were talking about care. And also, it's been referenced, you know, what you guys committed to do when I was doing the podcast with Stephen Dixon from Skylight Aviation with regards to the Skylight Care. I just think it's a great thing. I just want to say it now. You know, the fact that you've also offered obviously for a limited few, but you've offered to give some free courses subject to how many are on a particular course, and also supporting people who are doing services who've been placed, which I think is a great thing, Lewis.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chris. And, you know, we're running a 30-minute free seminar in December to give a kind of a light introduction to aircraft charter brokering. And on the back of that, as you correctly point out, that we're running 2 free courses. We capped kind of each course at 5 attendees. And that will be open to individuals that have unfortunately lost their job or been furloughed in the aviation industry, who kind of, you know, want to get back into it, and, you know, gain a bit of knowledge, a bit of expertise, and hopefully we can help them on their way. But you know, it's just, I feel it's just the right thing to do. If you're in a position to give back, then you should. So, yeah. No,
really good. And like I said, both Stephen and myself were so pleased to get that information back. It was fantastic. Really appreciate it. Now, I know one of the things that's so important when you have such a highly regulated industry as ours, and then you've got such a very, very sensitive product, is obviously the amount of training, but obviously it's competency-based training. So not just training for the sake of training, it's to cover the reasons why. Now, in your training courses, what areas do you really focus on that you think make the difference?
Well, first of all, lack of competence is what worries the pharmaceutical industry most about air cargo. When it comes to pharma, do we really know what we're dealing with? So trying to cover that gap is very important to increase the awareness as well as the competence and professionalism. With regards to your question, the most important areas is to create the proactive culture within the service delivery and capabilities. I normally say that, unfortunately, our aviation industry is still stuck in the 20th century. And so the pharma compliance, GDP compliance is a brilliant chance for the industry to step over into the 21st century, finally, changing its reactive culture to proactive culture, pretty much similar to how safety and security issues are dealt in aviation. And I often like to make parallels between safety, security, and pharma as far as air cargo of pharmaceuticals is concerned. And I'm telling people, please consider pharma as important, as serious, as vulnerable, as dangerous goods. However, not what it can do to us, but what we can do to it. So it's at our mercy, and we have to be able to handle it correctly. And when we're talking about proactive, as well as continuous improvement culture, the proactiveness is attained by very thorough risk management and knowledge of your risk processes, the risks that are residing within those processes, addressing them with correct mitigations to really address issues before they even happen. Because with the value of pharmaceutical and the sensitivity of the pharmaceutical product, we cannot afford even one claim, let alone, we can afford a little bit of complaints, but we can't really afford claims. This is as bad as safety concern for aviation. So we need to take it at similarly serious level and deal with it with the same kind of dedication, commitment, proactiveness, and leadership support in this for the operations and commercial teams is very important to drive this change. This is really a chance to change for the industry.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you hugely. And one thing I know, I was lucky enough to go to a friend's. I was on a tour at his facility, Rob Williams, and he was with Thermo Fisher, and all of his staff. I've never seen a workforce so committed to what they do and proud of what they do. And one of the easiest things was because every single medicine, vaccine, pharmaceutical, every single thing had what it was used for. And they also had regular videos of parents with children, or, you know, families with friends, you know, that, and they believed that they were actually, you know, delivering and looking after hope. And
yeah, that's correct.
And the reason why it makes people so much more. And what you said earlier about, you know, dangerous goods and other elements, people are more aware of them from a danger perspective because of what those goods can do to them. But when you look at it, what you can do to goods, which then have a knock-on effect to others, that's the most.
That is the biggest change shift in our industry when it comes to pharmaceutical. That's the shift we have to make.
Yeah.
And that is one of the most, most challenging areas, I think, for the carriers and handling agents to realize. And once they realize that, they can start dealing with it correctly and constructively.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Lewis, that's something that we've spoken about as well. That change whereby people start to appreciate why, that's also starting, I think, to become a lot more evident now as a result of people losing jobs, which we spoke about, from practical sizing from the, you know, on the passenger side. But once people start to realize that less damage, you know, less problems, less claims, you know, less unnecessary activities, legacies of waste, etc. Once they start to appreciate that, then they'll also start to contribute to the continuity and sustainability of their respective businesses, because they realize that it's not just somewhere that you come and you have to fill in 8 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours. It's somewhere where you come because by you supporting that organization properly, they're also supporting you, your family, your lifestyle, your sustainability. That understanding and awareness and education, I think, now needs to be taken on more.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that's a big motivation, at least with our, you know, discussions outside of this podcast, and, you know, how Albion is pursuing, you know, be it education wise or looking at how we can really enhance, you know, chartering, you know, to move the vaccine, be it, you know, with business aviation or freighters, as we call them now. You know, all the way through to your kind of normal kind of cargo freighters. So yeah, I think there's definitely a theme that's emerging, and I definitely think it's pulling people together, which is probably, you know, one of the benefits that is coming out of this, you know, this disaster that we're facing, essentially. So yeah, looking at the positives, you know, I agree with that, Chris, for sure.
If I may, what really brings it very close to home is that we are potentially all the users of that. What's not just a box, it's a life. It's a chance to live and not be sick, and that is very. It's amazing that this could be for our own family members, for our own friends. It's really very personal, and I think realization of that also moves people to be part of it. And on the other hand, yes, I think in this challenging working environment, I think at least this is one place where everyone can be very useful and still be useful. That's a gap that's well covered right now.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that not shock, but that realization of what it means and why we must make no mistakes. On top of that, we've got the eyes of the world and the press who are going to be focused on, you know, wherever the first spoilage happens, and then there'll be autopsies and digging in as to why and who and how. So from an industry perspective, we have to collaborate, share, inform, communicate, do all the positive things so that as an industry, we don't have any of those mistakes as well.
Yeah, I mean, as we know from the events that happened with PPE distribution in the world, whereas we could somehow afford those, indirectly they also had direct effect on the health of people. Sorry, indirectly they have the effect. But I think here we're talking about more valuable and more important commodities such as vaccines, and there is no room for mistake there at all.
Yeah.
And we need to learn from the previous mistakes and avoid the problems that happened with the PPE distribution globally.
Yeah.
And that, I think, was a good practice round for everyone to understand the pitfalls and the gaps that currently exist in the supply chains and the lack of proactive arrangements, lack of planning, contingencies, and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the culture was always just in time, and now it's just in case. There needs to be a balance in between the two. Now, Lewis, you were involved in lots of charters and repatriation flights, etc. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that Aynur has just focused on there is the PPE, and especially the face masks. Now, the way charter prices increased phenomenally as demand was there, and then we're still seeing now huge volumes of PPE sitting in warehouses that has either been kept there, has been refused because it's not the right standard, it wasn't done properly. Now that is such a waste of those charter resources.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of a freeze there on the frame, so hopefully it wasn't the shock of the question, Lewis.
Absolute massive waste of capital, and
there we go.
Yeah. Okay. No, just to kind of answer your question, yes. You know, it is extremely unfortunate considering, you know, the spike in the prices, you know, in air freight, in aircraft chartering for quite a prolonged period of time. And as you correctly point out, you know, a lot of this PPE product didn't necessarily pass what we call SSG, was held up at various points down the supply chain, which, you know, is a massive waste of resource. So there's lots of lessons that we should learn from that. And I think, you know, with the vaccine coming up now, and also, you know, what we're seeing is a lot of requests for commodities that would assist the administration of a vaccine. So syringes, we've got vials, etc. It's about, you know, making sure we don't make the same mistakes, making sure that, you know, our client is aware of the customs procedures, the delivery timeframes that are associated with the charter to make sure they can get their product on a flight. And of course, you know, with the vaccine, there's a cold chain element as well, which is an unknown for a lot of parties. So it's spreading that awareness and making sure that, you know, we don't, as a community, make those same failures. But I think there was a lot of lessons to be learned in that period of 4 to 6 months, for sure.
Yeah. We also spoke about, what do you call those little, the little bits on the end where they're doing the testing and
pipettes? Yeah, pipettes.
Lovely. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to just describe what a pipette is? Because I wasn't sure when I first heard it.
It's a little kind of plastic end to almost a syringe in many ways, where you kind of extract and then put samples into Petri dishes, etc. So yeah,
it works by the principle of suction.
There we go.
There you go.
I was hoping you were going to chip in, Aynur. You know,
clarification and competence, brilliant. Now, something that's really disturbing, and unfortunately, it's everywhere. The world is a good place full of good people, and then every now and again, somebody gets a bad idea and they do something that's not as best as possible. So, with some of those substandard face masks, now the security through the whole supply chain is going to have to be so strict, stringent, even though it already is within the industry. But people will be responding now to some of the media, the journalists who are saying, you know, how sensitive it's going to be and it's more valuable than gold, and, you know, all these types of discussions. But the security chain, Aynur, from your perspective, is very strong already.
Yeah. Well, what I want to say before even the security chain, which is very important part, luckily we're dealing with we are luckily having an industry, pharmaceutical industry, drug manufacturing industry, which is highly regulated. And although we did make some parallels with PPE distribution, they can't be really compared, because drug and vaccine, in this case, distribution is strictly regulated with good distribution practices, where everything is checked and risk assessed before approved. Every route has to be validated and would be checked for things like competence along the entire supply chain, including the security, and nothing will move. Nothing should move. I mean, I don't know, something may happen in the industry that wrong suppliers and supply chain partners were picked, that it went through the unqualified route, but really it mustn't happen. So the supply chain partners that will be all assessed before being approved for this route, for this transport, will ensure that all of the important aspects, including security aspects, are addressed in advance before they even start the transport on this route. And this is something that is preventing the issues of the risks to the healthcare or the vaccines and drugs being distributed. However, it also causes the challenges that would make access of the supply of our air cargo transportation suppliers to the ability to transport, to provide service to it, quite limited, because only those who really can will.
Yeah.
And they will be selected. And this is where no one can just jump on it. Everyone has to be prepared in advance. They have to develop their systems, their quality management system, their risk management, their proactive deviation management, all of the roles and responsibilities with the responsible people assigned to the jobs that are accountable for anything, any failures, and also ensuring that risk assessments and the service level agreements are well in place before anything even moves. That will ensure, that is designed to ensure that this kind of issues don't happen with the pharmaceuticals, with the vaccines during their transportation. And security is very important, because, as we know, these are going to be highly valuable, highly sought for. We know there is black markets out there. We know there's percentage of drugs that disappear into the black holes and reappear somewhere in illegal supply chains. Yeah. And this has to be by all means prevented, because there is a huge challenge. There's 8 billion people on the planet. There's very limited suppliers that are able to provide the qualified transportation, and to be able to quickly distribute, well, manufacturing of these vaccines is one thing, but then distribution of what's been manufactured is another. How soon are we going to cover the entire population that needs these vaccines as the first category of people safely, without having them dissipate somewhere in the supply chain because of very poor arrangements and basically failure of GDP compliance?
Yep, and that covers everything from first mile to last mile.
Absolutely, yeah. From the moment the need for transportation is conceived, yep, to the moment it's delivered, yep, delivered at the consignee's facility, not just at the airport, at the delivery dock, but beyond. Yep. And freight forwarders play a huge role in this, in how they arrange the entire supply chain, because they're the ones to arrange for everything. But obviously, all the carriers and the handling agents, they are equally as responsible. It's a shared responsibility. However, it's everyone's joint responsibility.
Yep, indeed. And everybody's got a joint focus. Now, coming to you, Lewis, and coming to areas that you specialise in. Obviously, with the reduction in passenger aircraft and then cargo capacity as a result, irrespective of the freighters, that's not going to stop now when vaccines become the primary and the most important cargo.
Correct.
The need for charters is obviously still going to be very, very strong, especially over the next, next 3 to 6, 3 to 9 months. Are you anticipating now a big uptake? Because obviously the supply chain for everything else needs to continue just as well.
Yeah, so you've kind of got two cargo flows. You know, you've got your normal kind of cargo flow that you'd expect, and then you've got your pandemic cargo flow, which is going to cause significant challenges when it comes to chartering. My main concern is around capacity availability. You know, and we're seeing it in Q4 already, a lot of the cargo operators out there in the market simply have no availability left. You know, they've been snapped up by various different clients, or, you know, long-standing clients. So often when charter brokers try and take capacity or get access to capacity, it's quite difficult. Okay, that's when the freighters play a role. And I think that's where we also need to be quite creative in terms of how we access capacity. Do we look towards maybe possible the business aviation sector? Is there, you know, avenues, corridors that we could utilize through the business aviation sector to deliver, let's say, small quantities of vaccine on certain routes? You know, another concern I have is obviously a lot of focus will be on the hub airports, tier 1 airports, I like to call it. So what about the distribution to tier 2, tier 3? You know, and that's kind of, you know, following that care theme that we've been, you know, discussing, you know, on this podcast. You know, who's going to take care for the regions that maybe don't have the accessibility to these freighters, or the airports are not equipped? Let's go, you know, we have to be quite creative. Do we then, as I said, engage the business aviation community, or do we push the freighters more to get that accessibility that we need? You know, regardless, before we start looking at the challenges of actually how we kind of do the final mile, I think, you know, you've got to look at the bigger picture here and kind of be, you know, have your care hat on and look at the regions that maybe people aren't discussing. You know, here in the Middle East, there's the regions that really need attention. Yemen, you know, parts of Syria, Afghanistan. You know, I think there's conversation, dialogues that should be had there. You know, we're already speaking to a few relief agencies on that matter. And I think it's discussions that need to be pushed, you know, as we continue.
Yeah, and it's an interesting subject because it's going to push and drive the industry. You know, it's going to give it a fast forward. So everybody's been talking about the different focuses over the last decades, whether it was the TQM decade, the cost decade, the leadership decade, and now it's the sustainability decade. But there's so many things that are being driven as a result of this. It's almost like a decade in 1 year. And I was talking to Michael Zara, who's the president of Drone Delivery Canada, and he was talking about one of their drones they call Condor, and it's you know, it can take up to 180 kilos and it can travel 200 kilometers. So there's options there. And Lewis, we spoke about, you know, perhaps with some of the smaller regional aircraft that isn't maxed out on the passenger side, that there's opportunities for, you know, for onboard courier with vaccines as well. So that's also something that's a great opportunity. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And we're trying to really explore that at the moment, because, you know, I'm very aware that, you know, capacity is going to be very, very tight. So my traditional operators that I usually approach, you know, are not going to have that availability that I need. So, you know, I had to brainstorm and, you know, with industry partners to see, you know, how can we access capacity in a clever way? You know, how can we service markets that, you know, are not going to be serviced at all or have any attention paid to them? And that's where the concept of OBC comes in for the carriage of critical goods. That's where, you know, the business aviation sector would come in. I'm sure there's a lot of jets out there that are not being utilized, and there's a lot of owners that would want their aircraft utilized. And if we can deliver, administer vaccine or supporting cargo, you know, for the administration of vaccine, then I think they will be more than happy to lend their jet. Okay, of course, you know, there's got to be an exchange of revenue at some point, but I think we've got to be quite clever in how we utilize the resources available to us. You know, the other concern I have is obviously there's a lot of passenger aircraft in the market sitting on the ground. Now, are airlines going to be willing to activate those to operate as freighters? You know, do they want to? Because there's a lot of, you know, costs involved with keeping them on the ground, the maintenance, but, you know, do they have access to the pilots to start flying them again? So there's lots of things that need to be discussed, you know, with key stakeholders. And I think, you know, having a platform, and we've discussed this before, Chris, as well, having a platform to engage those partners, to create, for example, a register of aircraft operators that would be available to kind of chip into this distribution network, then I think that's definitely a place for that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
If I can add here. Can I add here a little bit?
Of course you can, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, we are talking about a very sensitive issue here. The problem is we're talking about capacity availability. Just a general cargo capacity availability alone is a challenge, as I also understand from Lewis's comments. Now, if we talk about the competent capacity availability from point of view of pharma distribution, from the GDP compliance point of view, and the paradox is that these are two competing aspects here. From one side, we need capacity, and we are in shortage of competent capacity. On the other hand, the urgency of the vaccine distribution is such that air cargo transport comes as the first best solution because of its reachability and the time factor, the speed factor we've discussed at the very beginning. Yet, do we have competent capacity in air cargo? And this is where we came together with Lewis to see how we can increase that competence in the charter capacity, for example. Yeah. One area which hasn't been addressed for a while, because as we know that the competence was being addressed now in regular carriers and in a more legacy carriers domain as opposed to the charter capacity. And but without this additional charter capacity competence, resolving the issue of capacity for quick distribution of this critical vaccine is going to be a real challenge.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, Aynur. And I think, delivering that competency it is a challenge in itself. And, selecting the right operators that you feel they're going to deliver is critical as well. And I think the broker has to take up a role there as well to, am I putting forward an operator that has the competence to deliver this solution? I think, there's an element of responsibility and due diligence on the broker side. So I think, that's a massive topic, Aynur, for sure.
Yeah, because that's
big gaps. There's big gaps.
Yeah. It's the capacity plus competence we have to deal with.
Yeah.
And we've got to do it very quickly. So it's a big learning.
Yeah.
And thanks to the scientists for doing a miraculous job in producing the vaccines. It's now putting the whole industry under pressure to be able to keep up with that positivity. But it's a good thing. It's a great thing. Now, something that I'd just like to add as well, Aynur, and we've been talking, people say, right, you've got the pharma producers, no problem. You've got the air forwarders, the freight forwarders, understanding, appreciation, and logistical combination of who to use down the chain. Then you've got your carrier who can fly it. Then you've got your GHA who has to collect it or deliver it. And you've got that area which is causing a lot of problems, which is the ramp, and especially in certain climates. So now I know there's lots of other equipment that's available. So lots of companies around. So you've got such a SkyCell. You've got various other companies that are producing equipment, containers, packaging, blankets, etc. Do you just want to cover a little bit about that area, just to give everybody a degree of confidence on how it's being managed? And it has been managed well for a long time already.
Well, yeah, a ramp is known as the highest risk area as far as air cargo operations are concerned. I think about 50% of all issues happen there. And that is all because of the poor planning and poor implementation. There is variety of equipment available out there, from active containers to passive systems to thermal blankets of various sorts, lightweight, breathable, to thick ones and very heavy duty, which are designed to prevent both from sun and heat and as well as the cold. However, I always say that it's not enough to have equipment and technical solutions. It's the processes that matter the most, is how you can use them. Yeah. I mean, you can have airplanes, but not everyone can have an airline. It's how you arrange it. Same thing is with the ramp protection, prioritized handling, time management, controlling timestamps, introducing relevant and measurable key performance indicators and measuring them and reacting on them when they fail is the most important area. Of course, the availability of this different equipment makes it all easier. And within the risk management process of preparing for transportation, it's always taken into consideration what sorts of capabilities exist in order to protect pharma cargo at this particular airport with this particular airline with this particular handling agent, and what sort of technical advantages or disadvantages they have, and then that is used in order to apply the correct time management techniques to what's available, what's not, to be able to prioritize and implement, and the prioritization has to be reasonable as well. But of course, what I want to touch upon here, most important solution for the safety of pharmaceutical or vaccine is its packaging. Yep. However, lack of understanding of the challenges on the ramp or in the cargo terminal results in selection, sometimes not on purpose, but sometimes because of the cost-cutting initiatives, in selection of wrong packaging, which results in more insecure or unsafe conditions for the pharmaceutical product, while in the hands of the airline and handling agents, including on the ramp, than necessary. So I think the combination of the knowledge of what's happening on the ramp in the cargo terminal operations, the capabilities and the limitations, making that knowledge available to those who arrange the transport so that they can pick up the correct packaging, and only combination of all these factors can work and can give the result, the outcome we're all trying to achieve here. And I think that this is really shared responsibility on both sides. We can't only rely on the availability of these technological solutions, because they can be prohibitive in terms of cost. As we're talking about the cost of the vaccine already, the type of, there's various vaccines available ranging from -70, we're here now, to normal 2 to 8 range. But the cost might be prohibitive enough. And the availability of good processes would be the solution to avoid additional costs involving active container usage, passive container usage, and all of these additional things, which can be used. However, will they not make transportation even more costly?
Yeah, which is a big problem. I mean, and that's another discussion. It's also one where everybody's talking about, looking after the environment, and we're looking at electric vehicles, etc. And you've got airports that don't have enough supply or a big enough supply. So, all of this is catching up, and at least everybody's going in the right direction. But it's very positive what's happening. Now, guys, coming to the end of the podcast, if you could wave a magic wand, what would be the thing that you'd like to see the most happen in the next 6 months? And I'm not talking now about that the vaccines are given to everybody. I'm talking about something that would advance or help the supply chain, so it was very, very effective, very, very competent, very, very compliant, and very, very controlled.
Well, if I can take the advantage of ladies go first.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, well, I would really like to see everyone realizing that more and more supply chain partners need to engage into raising their competence very, very seriously by setting up proactive management and control systems, which are enabled through such things as quality management systems and the realization of importance. Unfortunately, most of the supply chain partners in our air cargo transportation supply chain always underestimate the importance and the usefulness of quality management systems, and see them as just a tick for attracting customer, like ISO certification and so on. However, as I see quality management system, I think it's implementation and design and correct implementation of such system would make all of the air cargo supply chain participants future sustainable by giving them an opportunity to take part in this sort of transportation. And this is the segment of the global industry where this pharmaceutical biotechnologies is one area that is exponentially growing all the time and will continue growing so. And we need to have the competence, and that competence can't be acquired, as you said, within the next 6 months. I would like everyone to start now. everyone to get their act together, to understand that without them really incorporating quality management system techniques into their systems, into their ways of managing their organization, they won't be able to be part of it. And they will, by being so inert, basically will be failing the entire mankind, I'd say.
Yeah, no, you're right, Aynur. And that goes for all industries, because now with everybody focusing on every single pound, euro, dollar, whatever currency and costs, it's not about cutting costs where you can make benefits. It's about making people more competent and more aware and understanding why it's important to protect the business that they work for, so that it's there to protect their lifestyle and their sustainability thereafter.
Yeah, identifying your risks and managing them for your customers. Your ability to identify and manage your risks will make you attractive or not.
Yeah. Very good. And Lewis?
Yeah, a few items. A care platform where people can, and stakeholders can discuss, what's required. At least on the charter lift side with operators, GHAs, the sharing of knowledge is really quite critical here. I think the more knowledge is put into the pot, the more benefits we can get out of it. Similar to what you've mentioned, an investment in education and awareness and levels of competency to avoid, failures. I think they're all kind of key areas, and to look beyond, from a charter perspective, look beyond the kind of key travel corridors, but the regions of the world that will need help and that will need extra attention to really kind of distribute, this vaccine and other critical, requirements, and how we engage other, stakeholders, within the aviation industry, so everyone can kind of move towards one goal. So
yeah, 100%. I think if we're going to fail, we need to fail fast, but we need to learn even quicker.
Yeah.
Especially some of the examples that have been thrown up, over the last few months. We definitely must not repeat where things have gone wrong.
Yeah, I think that what we need to do is even prevention of the failure, understanding the whole seriousness of the situation and dealing with it very seriously and proactively is the only way.
Yeah, the root cause. Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And thank you for joining us on the podcast. Lewis, thanks very much for the reference to the care. I love that. And I know Stephen is very appreciative as well of the fact that with regards to any onboard couriers that might be or may not be given an opportunity with vaccines, etc., that you're looking to contract them or get them from people who've already been displaced within the industry, which is a benefit as well, because they understand the industry and everything else. So well done, you. Really appreciate that. Aynur, thank you again. Lovely to see you. I shan't forget what you said at the beginning of the show. That will stay with me for a long time. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for inviting. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
icon that has been displayed. We are currently in record. I will let you know once again once the record icon has been removed, and please stay on the line once it has been. Chris, please give me a cue and I will give you a countdown.
Yep, ready to go, Simon.
On 3, 2, 1. Chris, the show is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are again, another session at the Pharma Digital event. And I'm so pleased to say we've got 3 colleagues from the industry from somewhere very special, Singapore, and I'd like to introduce them now. So first and foremost, we've got Jay-Z Yip, who's the Head of Cargo and Logistics Development for Changi Airport. So Jay-Z, lovely to see you and thank you for coming on board.
Thank you, Chris.
Really appreciate it.
Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you. Let's hope so as we go through the rest of the podcast. No, it will be, I promise you. And then we've got Daniel Wong, who's Head of Strategy, Planning and Engineering with SATS Cargo Services. So Daniel, welcome. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Glad to be here.
Very good. And last but by no means least, we got Swan Ong, who's the GM Key Accounts and Verticals for Singapore Airlines Cargo. So Swan, thank you so much again.
Thanks, Chris, for having me here.
Absolute pleasure. So we've got the entire, well, almost the entire Singapore team within logistics. All we needed was a forwarder, but I know that Singapore is going to get a very, very, very good, let's say, good audience and a good display from the 3 of you. So really looking forward to it. Now, can I ask each of you, please, just to give us a little bit of an introduction as to what you do and how this last 6 to 8 months has affected you and your business. So if we can start with you first, Jay-Z.
Okay, thanks, Chris, for the question. So hi, everyone. I'm JC. I'm the General Manager for Cargo and Logistics Development for Singapore Changi Airport. So in a few words, I will describe my role as overseeing the business development of Changi Airport's air cargo business. So what I do on a day-to-day basis, I look at both the demand and supply side of things, right? So on supply side, we do account manage all the freighter operators in Changi Airport. We also talk to passenger airlines because of their valuable capacity. On the demand side, I would say that we look after cargo verticals development. Over the last couple of years, there are a couple of verticals that is pretty special for Singapore as well as Changi Airport. And that includes pharmaceuticals, perishables, the cold chain side, e-commerce, as well as advanced manufacturing. So on this part of my job, we actually work very closely with our air cargo stakeholders like the freight forwarders, the cargo handlers, and the airlines and even government agencies to develop and to push more cargo flows through Singapore. Now, the pandemic has started for us sometime in March. Yep. I would say that, I mean, I'm sure you heard this word a lot, right? It has been really unprecedented. And it has been quite, I would say, a challenging time. I would describe the last 9 months or so in 2 phases. So in the earlier months of the pandemic, I think we were all trying to stabilize the supply chain to ensure supply chain continuity. We were very focused on giving clear guidelines to our ecosystem, right? Yep. For example, when borders closed, there were a bit of questions regarding, for example, a crew layover in Singapore. Yep. And when the new phenomenon of PACC flights, passenger freighters, become a phenomenon, right? We also need to share with airlines what is the guidelines in Singapore, right? How do you load cargo in cabin and how do you get approval for such a process? At the same time, we also need to take very good care of all our stakeholders in terms of their welfare, safety, as well as security. So a lot of work has been done to make sure that we have, all the physical distancing in place. We disinfect, all the cargo area in our Changi Air Freight Center. We make sure that all the staff is being well taken care of. So very much the first few months, it was really keeping our air cargo supply chain open. And back then, we also worked very closely with the different stakeholders and our government agencies to keep critical supplies, coming through Changi. And that includes your food supplies, as well as medical supplies like PPE. Yep. I would say that that has in a way been stabilized. So in the last few months, I think the hot topic is really the vaccines, right? We are expecting the vaccines to be approved and mass distribution to be kick off in the next couple of months. We are now very busy in raiding and preparing our air cargo sector for this logistical challenge.
Okay, very good, very good. Okay, and now, and thank you very, very much for that. And now if we can move across to you, Daniel.
Thanks, Chris. Well, I'm Daniel Wong from CAAS Cargo Services. So I'm the head of cargo strategy, planning, and engineering. So my primary focus is to look at how to move the cargo business forward. How do we develop new cargo solutions for our customers, and how do we position ourselves with the advancement of digitalization in the industry? So that's been my main focus. In the last 8 to 9 months, obviously, like what Jesse has mentioned, the pandemic has really hit everybody hard. On our side, well, when we first went into the pandemic, sometime in March and April, there was a lot of, first of all, there was a lot of apprehension because very little was known about the coronavirus, right? We all, there was a lot of, I may say, fear, but very little was known about the virus. So the first few months was pretty much spent within the company to ensure that our workforce is safe, our workshop from the virus, to ensure that our ability to maintain the operations is not affected because of the virus. So that was the primary focus in the first 2 months. Well, when the pandemic hit, we saw about a 50% reduction in cargo volume initially. Not as bad as our colleagues on the passenger side, but still 50% cargo volume reduction. What we did was that we took the opportunity of this of this slowdown in business to really concentrate on training our people and revalidating all our SOPs, because we were confident that the cargo business, the cargo industry will rebound in a matter of time. So we took a lot of time spent on training our people. We sent a lot of people for training courses. And also we took a lot of time to review our SOPs, to look at status of our equipment. That was a good move, because in the last 1-2 months, we have really seen an uptick in the cargo business. At this moment that I'm speaking, I think we are almost at 78 to 80% of pre-COVID levels in terms of cargo handled in sets. So that's a good thing. And we are preparing to go back to full steam ahead in the next few months, right? So on the topic of the vaccine, well, that's on everybody's mind today, right? Because of the latest news announced by Pfizer, by Moderna, and certainly by AstraZeneca. And for SATS, we have, well, I would say that we have pretty much prepared ourselves for this by really back in 2010, where we set up a 8,000 square meter dedicated facilities for the handling of perishable and pharmaceuticals in Singapore. So, and along the way, we have improved on these facilities. And right now, well, obviously right now in the last few weeks, the focus has been how to use this facility, how to leverage on our experience on pharmaceutical handling to tailor it to the incoming vaccine handling. Yeah, and we are working very closely with the other stakeholders in the community, like what Jesse has said. We are working very closely with Changi Airport Group. We are working very closely with Singapore Airlines. We are working very closely with the freight forwarders.
Yeah, no, very good, very good. Thank you so much, Daniel. And now Swan.
Hello, hi, I'm Swan. My role in Singapore Airlines is in managing the key verticals for a company, of which, of course, healthcare is one of the utmost important, particularly now, and also to look after the key accounts for the company. Yeah, I think JZ as well as Daniel has mentioned quite a bit of what pretty much happened. For us, yeah, it happened all pretty quickly. If I recall, like especially around, I think if I'm not wrong, it's end March to April, when the passenger flights were like reduced quite quickly. Initially, we were hoping for a V-shaped recovery, but soon, you know, it comes quite clear that it's going to take a while. Yeah, but for us in the cargo world, things are very, very busy. The demand continues, the business is still there. You know, we have all these volumes that are coming in. And what we did very, very quickly is to introduce the passenger aircraft carrying cargo only. We coined the term PACC, right? It was coined by one of our regional VP who is based in North Asia. So we call it PACC, passenger aircraft for cargo carriage only. So we set up a network. So actually, before we set up a network, initially we were running like charters, right? Because there was requests, but then very quickly, you know, we set up a network to support this requirements for cargo. Yeah, so I think, yeah, for us, again, very, very busy months. And pretty soon we started introducing the cargo in cabin, where we now could uplift cargo in the cabin. So we have 2 aircraft that was ready by Scoot. And then just probably like 2 months back, we started another 2 for Singapore Airlines. Those are the wide body 777-300s. Yeah. And I think, you know, like this few weeks been really busy for everybody, for me personally as well, but also very positive because we have heard positive news from the vaccine front.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the last 3 weeks, you know, we've seen a lot more information coming out as well for us to prepare for vaccine handling. Yep. And also, I think for the passenger side of business, you know, there's optimism. You know, we are in the recovery mode. We're planning to bring back the flights gradually.
Very good, very good. Guys, can I just ask you quickly, what's the status at the moment regarding COVID in Singapore?
I think it's pretty much well controlled. We have like single-digit numbers now in community transmission. Sorry, I think, yeah, right. I think if I'm not wrong, they are mostly import cases.
Yeah, I think in the past 1 week or so, the cases that we are reporting are mainly imported cases. So in terms of the community cases, I think very much has been contained for now, and we hope that it will stay that way.
Yeah. No, fingers crossed. Touch wood. Yep. No. But it's very good. Now, I've been to Singapore many times, and obviously the last one was for the IATA World Cargo Symposium. Now, Singapore, for anybody that's been there, they know how well organized, structured, and supportive it is. Now, Jay-Z, from an airport perspective, and you know, looking after your own ecosystem, one of the things that I've been thinking for a long time is that airports now, they need to take more of a leading role as part of their ecosystem with everybody that's part of it. Now, I know that's practiced quite strongly there in Singapore. What has been the secret or the formula for success with bringing everybody together in Singapore?
Well, I would say that for Changi Airport, right, we always see ourselves playing the role of an orchestrator, right, when it comes to air cargo business, because we see ourselves as a neutral party, right? We have no commercial interest in any of the air cargo business. We are neither a freight forwarder, nor the cargo handler, nor the airline in the case of Changi Airport. So we thought that, you know, we should play a very important role to get the entire ecosystem together with common objective. And we always believe in collaboration. And in the last couple of years, I would say that we have taken a very strong collaborative and cooperative approach with all our stakeholders. So one good example is, as you know, one of the common theme for the air cargo industry is how do we accelerate digitalization. So about 1 year plus or so, we have taken it upon ourselves to explore whether we could actually pursue an air cargo community system with our stakeholders. And I think we have gotten some success in that. We have actually launched our air cargo community system earlier this year. So we are starting with a couple of use cases where we work with the different stakeholders to start, you know, sharing data in a very trusted and reliable manner, you know, just to enable, you know, more efficiency, you know, to produce more productivity for everyone. And coming back to the vaccines, we are also taking a collaborative and community approach towards this logistical challenge. So at the global front, Daniel and I, we are part of this global task force called Project Sunrays, which is championed by both TIACA as well as Pharma.Aero. So we are very involved in that project in order to bring transparency between vaccine producers as well as the global air cargo industry. And at the local level, we have also started a public-private joint task force amongst key stakeholders, including Singapore Airlines, the 2 cargo handlers, and a group of freight forwarders, as well as the public sector comprising process agencies like custom, border control, security, to really discuss and pre-identify what could possibly be some of the bottlenecks or risk that could take place in some of our cargo flows when the vaccine distribution commences.
Yep.
I think we are treading along quite well on that track. So all in all, I would say that I think as an airport, I think we play a very important role in bringing everyone together and also to be a champion of community collaboration.
Yeah, no, I don't think that could have been better said, JJ. That's really well put together. Now, you mentioned there about Pharma.Aero and TIACA, which is a great initiative, and Sunrays. Now, as far as that's concerned, when they did the initial survey, parties were saying that perhaps the logistics chain wasn't as ready as it could have been. Now, the one thing that we all know, and thank God for the scientists, they've done a miracle. They perform miracles now by getting these vaccines all coming out and ready. But what's happened this last year, and you were talking about digitization and care and collaboration and all those, those good terms that are easily said, but not as easily practiced. Almost like in a decade, everything has been squashed into this year, to survive, to be sustainable. Now there's a different approach looking at business. Instead of just in time, now it's just in case, and people are bordering in between. But if the communities get together and they do that data sharing, it's something that we'll be able to throw away as one of the legacy waste issues prior to COVID, where everybody was, wanting to keep hold of everything, were a little bit scared of sharing. I think that's one good thing, touch wood, that will come out of this. And I think you definitely agree, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, and really well put, Jay-Z. Now, Daniel, as far as if we sort of go down the chain a little bit, you've got the freight forwarder who knows exactly what the pharmaceutical guys need and want, and then they're responsible then to make sure that everything downstream as it comes through the carrier to yourselves is handled the way it should be. Now, everybody has been talking about GDP and CEIV. Now, where do you stand with regards to the importance of both references, but especially CEIV now for our industry?
Well, Chris, for us, we actually place same level of importance for both. That's why for us, we are both CEIV and GDP certified. In fact, this is also our goal to be dual certified across our network of cargo terminals in 10 countries. And I think this is important because it is important that we cover both certification, because the reason being is that certain companies look at one of the certification more importantly than the other, and therefore it's good. And also it's always good to be certified for both, so that what we're trying to say is that we take the best of both to make it as strong as possible. And that's how we see it. I would say that for the CEIV, which is also a little bit more aviation based because it's being spearheaded by IATA, that also allow us to work together with the other aviation or cargo supply chain stakeholders to make sure that the entire process is a robust process.
Yeah, no, very good, very good. And I admire the fact that you see it as, getting certified to both. You've covered everything then entirely. So, yeah, well done. And I'm not surprised, Daniel. Not surprised at all, my friend. Now, Swan, with regards to the carrier, so obviously very important. You know what you need to do. You know how to get pharmaceuticals and the upcoming vaccines from point to point. Now, with extreme climates and weather conditions, obviously one of the concerns that you would have whilst you're giving the contracts to GHAs around your network is how do they actually manage on the ground? So what additional activities or requests or requirements have you put into your SLAs or your contracts?
Okay, I think relating to the vaccine handling, we have been, just for example, just with SATS, since they're here, we do have very regular meetings with Daniel himself, actually. We have our own task force. We have formed a task force to do this preparation. On a week, I think every 2 weeks, we have a face-to-face meeting with Daniel and his team to tie in a strict SOP for vaccine handling. So this SOP includes, like it will be different. It's based on our current pharma. We have a pharma product through CAAS. So it's based on this SOP, but tighter, right? So we're looking at tighter tow-in times, tow-out times, like for example, the containers. The industry standards, we read it like every 6 hourly, right? So we just agreed with Daniel, I think it was just last week, Daniel, to do it, like read it every 4 hourly. So this is just an example. And we also been talking to the Daniel's team in SLACS as well to look at dry ice to make sure that we have enough supply in Singapore, because we know that vaccines will be, to carry vaccines, we definitely need dry ice carriage, right? So supply will be very important. On top of it, we have been looking at facilities as well to make sure that we have enough facilities. To this end, we have also engaged PSA, which is another company in Singapore, to look at the reefers. So this would be like providing additional space if required.
Okay, so as part of
training, of course. Yeah. Sorry.
As part of the mitigation, you've got a fleet of reefers on standby.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, which is good. Now you're also.
Hey, Chris.
Sorry.
Pardon me?
Yeah, I think sorry. Just to add, the other part is also the people front. Yeah, so we have rolled out training materials focusing on pharma handling and focusing on vaccines, so specifically to the stations where we are expecting the first phase of vaccines will come out, as well as to the main import countries for us, where Singapore is a good distribution hub for Southeast Asia and Southwest Pacific countries.
Okay, very good. And so part of the through call, you've got a quality corridor network.
Okay, yeah.
You want to just explain a little bit about that?
Okay. So we have been carrying pharmaceutical for a while, right? But the quality corridor is an additional measure that is more stringent. And what we do is we audit the stations, the ground handlers in the corridors, along the corridor, to standards equivalent to a CEIV standards. Yes, and on top of it, we provide, we call it the thermal covers, thermal blankets.
Yep.
Yes, what we do is we feed it at the origin, and then we take it out at the destination. So this protects the pharma shipment from end to end.
Okay, very good. And
sorry, Chris.
Yeah, sure, JZ.
Yeah, if I may, can I weigh in on the part about the GDP and CEIV?
You certainly can. And welcome.
Yeah, I just want to add on, I just want to echo what Daniel has mentioned just now, right? I don't think it's fair for us to make a comparison between GTP and CEIV, because I think they have different objectives, and I think they are both equally important. But the point about CEIV, right? I think personally for us, I thought that with the IATA launch of CEIV, it has actually allowed and enabled the air cargo industry to speak a common language.
Yes.
So in Singapore, as you know, we are the first in Asia Pacific to actually form the community to attain the CEIV with Singapore Airlines, the cargo handlers, and the freight forwarders. And with that community approach, everyone is aligned with the objective, and we speak. And since then, right, we are speaking the same language, when it comes to pharmaceuticals handling. And in the last couple of years, I would say that there are also local and as well as global communities, right, that sprung out of CEIV. If I may again, right, I mean, Pharma.Aero is a notable example, right? Yep. The entire association is founded on the philosophy and principles of CEIV. And our main mission is really to forge collaborations amongst global airport CEIV communities. So I would say that CEIV has really bring the community and the air cargo industry closer together when it comes to air pharma handling.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think right at the very beginning, when IATA was talking about it and introducing it, lots of people were seeing the additional cost and would they get a return on investment. But I think the points that you've raised there are very, very true. It's brought everybody together with a common understanding and the importance of pharma. And now, obviously, the world are seeing the importance of vaccines. It's so, so critical that people do things in a certain way.
Chris, if I may add on also to what Swan mentioned earlier about the vaccine handling. I think for the vaccine handling, I would say that every one of us now has a common goal.
Yeah.
Every one of us, be it at an organization level or even at a personal level, somehow we know how impactful has been the coronavirus, and all of us somehow even in a distant way know that someone did caught the coronavirus, and we're all very, very determined, I think, to overcome this pandemic, and therefore there is a common goal. I felt that there's a common goal, and that's why I think it will work very well in terms of collaboration, because everyone has got a common goal in terms of making sure that the vaccine handling will be smooth and the vaccine will arrive at the right place and be given to the right people.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And again, very valid and nice words there, Daniel. Really appreciate it. Now, with the launch, every Monday now has suddenly turned into good news. And now with that good news, people are starting to see hope. They're smiling a little bit more. They can see, they can see a positive light at the end of the tunnel. And I keep saying, and it's not the train coming towards us. It's something very positive. Obviously, a lot of respect and sympathy for anybody that's been affected. It's been a terrible time for so many people, and also for the poor people that have been displaced from their jobs in the industry that they love. But I think the learning experience and the coming together now of the entire industry is such that we've got the chance now to really, really move forward as we come out of this collectively as an industry. Now, with the vaccines that have come out, so obviously Pfizer, then the first thing people said was fantastic, and then and the but was because of the extreme temperature controls that were required. Then you got Moderna, and again, everybody's saying fantastic. Now there's another one, and then luckily we're seeing then a little bit more flexibility with regards to the temperature range. Then the Oxford and AstraZeneca, and the same sort of thing. Now, obviously, there's Sinovac, there's Sputnik 5, there's several others, and there's going to be lots more. So that whole combination is going to allow countries, communities to decide which is the best for them with regards to the capability of the logistics. However, for all of us that have been in the industry for so long, handling pharma and handling special goods is not unusual to us. It's not unusual. So as far as spreading that confidence and that capability, that's what needs to be done now from within the industry. Now, you've all spoken about training, and there's been a few mentions there about auditing, okay? Now, if you look at a just culture and you're within an SMS human factor focus period, it's all about what people at the top say to the people at the bottom, how confident people and I shouldn't say top and bottom, but at each ends of the hierarchy. So the practical people who are performing the tasks, they know more than anybody at the top on a day-to-day basis as to what can and can't go wrong. Now that culture is so important. So how are you managing to cultivate that through everybody by letting them know why it's so important, but now more so that the eyes of the world see a positive community and there'll be no spoilage? How are you putting that across with your people? Swan, do you want to go from the carrier perspective first?
Yeah, sure. I think I think many people, especially everybody, right, that I've known, personally feels very strongly about doing their part for this important thing. This important event, and I think it's in all of us to want to do our best. But what we have done in addition to that is also we have actually curated like training decks specifically for vaccine handling. We will be engaged. I think we have started engaging some of our stations, particularly where the vaccines are coming from and into. We have spoken to them regularly. we're getting the feedback as well and getting the buy-in, taking in consideration the feedback, so that, you know, it's always better than when people has a buy-in, right? Rather than being told that this is what you have to do. You know, so we are not going on the top-down approach. It's really more consultative.
Yep. Okay. Very good. Very good. And Jay-Z?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, the COVID-19 vaccine, right, is an acute topic. And it's very important, and it really touches everyone on a personal note. I think we are all waiting for the vaccines really to be approved in order to save lives and also to restart our economies. For us, I think as an airport, as I mentioned earlier on, I think what we have done is to really work alongside with the community. We have kicked off a joint task force, as mentioned, really is to create the kind of transparency to really share information and really to be honest with ourselves, you know, whether there are potential bottlenecks and risks in the cargo flows, because our ultimate objective, right, is to make sure, I always say that the COVID-19 vaccines, right, need to handle with STAR performance, STAR. And S stands for security, T, transparency, A, agility, and R, reliability. And we are trying to get the community with this common objective that we need to handle each and every vaccine shipment with STAR quality. And I think that communication and collaboration is very important.
Oh, 100%. And well put. What was the STAR again?
Security, security,
yeah.
Transparency, agility, and reliability.
Very good. Yeah, believe you me, I shall be using that.
Sure, go ahead.
I do love an acronym. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Now, Daniel, just taking that concept forward, and you mentioned as well about, you know, training and SOPs and everything. Audits are so important. So when organizations have a positive culture, they welcome self-assessments and audits, and they want to understand about continual improvement. That's so important in an organization. Now, I've been in many of your facilities. I know many of your management team, so I know that that's something that you do on a regular basis. But how important is it to help people understand how they're doing and why it's so important what they're doing?
Well, I think, Chris, I mean, for our organization, you know, the day-to-day work that our people do expose them to certain risks of safety risks. And therefore, for us, we really take safety very seriously. And to the sense that, for example, even at a management level, even myself level, we do walk the ground, we do talk to the staff on safety. And when we do such walks, we only talk about safety. We don't talk about anything else, right? Yeah. And also we have our monthly safety meeting where it's not, you know, in a lot of companies, when you have safety meetings, when you look around the room, there are people who are executive and management, but our safety meeting comprises of staff from every level in the organization, representative of staff. So that's where these staff in the meeting, they will be able to see how serious our management is in terms of safety matters. And then also they will be able to see that, you know, whatever feedback that's taken, it is being acknowledged, it's being worked on. And through this meeting, through this representative in this meeting, the word of mouth will go down to the floor that the management are really serious about safety, right? And then, of course, at the end of the day, like I mentioned, for this vaccine handling, there is a common goal of everybody to make sure that it goes well. And that in itself is a motivation for everyone to make sure that we do the right thing at the right time, at the right place.
Yeah, no, again, well put. And so we're talking about the SAG concept, the Safety Action Group principle. And I think it's great that you include it all the way from both ends, because when people can see how serious the senior management are taking it, then they also, like you said, they pass that across to their colleagues, and everybody understands. And this SAG principle, the Safety Action Group, is so important for any organization. And I think at this moment, for everybody in aviation, when people talk about dangerous goods and safety, we know the things that can harm us. But now with pharmaceuticals and with vaccines, it's what you do to it that could possibly harm others. And it's having that awareness and looking after other parties and especially caring about it that makes the industry so valuable.
And just to add on, just to add on, within the cargo services business unit, we meet 3 times a week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. This is what we call the operations meeting, where it is chaired by my boss, who is the overall responsible for the cargo services. And I say it's participated from every level, even some of the, what we call the cargo coordinators. And in this meeting, although the name is called the operations meeting, but the first item on the agenda is always on safety matters. So what happened that wasn't safe? How do we resolve that? So that has been the emphasis that we've been placed on safety.
Yeah, no, that's good. And like I said, everywhere where I've been associated, it's practiced. It's not just preached. So I think that's a wonderful thing. Now, guys, if I was to ask you now, from everything that you've done collectively and in a collaborative, and whether it's task forces, because people are hearing task forces everywhere, from governments all the way down to every single part of the business. So they're not sure how these task forces are coordinated, but it comes across very clearly that you guys have got your task force off pat and it's working very well. What would you say have been the biggest successes with all the shocks and the surprises and the risk assessments and the mitigations? What do you think have been the biggest successes of the Singapore task force and the way you've approached what has happened and now what needs to happen? So, Jay-Z, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I would actually say that, right, we actually commenced and kickstarted the task force quite short time framed, and we have everyone's commitment in terms of their time and resources. If I really think back, why is everyone, apart from, COVID-19 vaccine is being a very acute and paramount topic right now, I think it's also because all this while our air cargo community, we practice really back to the word collaboration, right? So several years ago, we have kicked off this local pharmaceutical initiative called Pharma at Changi, where we actually bring together all CEIV certified companies together, and we have regular dialogues, on how we can do better in terms of pharma handling and how we can collectively promote Singapore as a trusted air pharma hub. And this community helps because during this crisis, when we call for help, everybody, responded to this. So we say, yes, we need to start a task force, private and public, to see how we can address potential bottlenecks, identify risk, and see, and let's have a common goal on how we can solve this challenge. Everybody responded swiftly and very fast. And the task force was created, I would say, in a few days' time. And subsequently, we all organized ourselves in workshops and everybody came. So I would say that the success of the task force, it's too early to really mention success, but I would say the success in convening this task force is really due to the collaboration spirit that we have over the last couple of years.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And Swan, what's your experience?
I agree. Because we already had collaboration in place, like what JC has mentioned about Pharma and Changi. And also, I think it's also about being prepared. So for Singapore Airlines, we have been investing on the healthcare product that we have, Tuku, for a while. We have been working on the expansion of the Tuku corridor, right, which fits in really nice for, it really helps us now, but it's not new. It's something that we've been working on. So I think being prepared is very important, in addition to, of course, collaboration. We've seen a lot of openness in people. I think, just a lot of transparency. Everybody is really ready to help each other out. So since May, we internally have formed our own task force as well within the company. And as a task force, we have been engaging various parties in the supply chain to get ourselves ready. So like when Jay-Z called for the Changi task force, it was very fast for us to react as well and to be able to contribute.
Very, very, very good. And Daniel?
Well, Chris, if I may say, maybe expand a little bit. I think it is in our Singapore DNA that we collaborate and work together. Even at the government level, we have task force, inter-ministries task force, we have private public sector task force. So I think it's in our DNA. And the other thing that I'd like to say is that with regards to the Changi community, I think one of the reasons why there has been a lot of collaboration is that I think every one of us, every organization, every stakeholders in the Changi community, air community, we truly understand that our success depends on the success of the Singapore hub.
Yeah.
And therefore, there is that larger goal to make Singapore a successful hub so that every one of us will be successful.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I totally agree. I think some of the words that are going to be well referenced in history books and with next generations, they'll look back and they'll say, why? Well, not why didn't they, but the one sentence or the one combination of a sentence that I've yet to hear somebody say is that we've got an unprecedented task force collaboration in place. So those I think those three terms, if they put them together, it's a nightmare, and it's words that we keep hearing. But like I said, I've got a lot of experience there in Singapore and with the organisations from Singapore, and I totally endorse what you're saying there, Daniel. It's a great culture with regards to collaboration. Now, can I ask you all another question now? What would you say are the most critical and urgent steps that you feel are now necessary, to ensure an effective oversight and handling of the vaccines once they're established and once everybody knows what's going on? Because to be fair to our industry, we still don't know what we don't know. So there's a lot of information that still has to come specifically. And, I think the perception that it's all going to come in one big bang is wrong. There's a lot of focus now on how will it be selected? And a lot of the selection process will be based on the last mile as well. So that's an area that, that's got to become more effective and more efficient. So from your perspectives, what urgent or critical steps do you think are now necessary for everybody to consider?
Right, if I may go first, right, I think I would say transparency. We really need more transparency, because I would say that even though the last couple of weeks or months, we have more information regarding the vaccines, candidates, and some of their supply chain requirements, but there is still a long list of unknowns and uncertainties. So Chris, I think earlier on you mentioned that, yes, handling pharma, right, actually is not foreign to the air cargo industry. We have been handling pharma for years, right, including frozen, deep frozen, even cryogenic temperature condition. The reason why I think people touted COVID-19 vaccines distribution as a very challenging task is because the vaccines development has been accelerated, right? I would say 4 times than any other preceding vaccines. And because of that, there is a long list of unknowns. Right. Yeah. Today, we are still not very sure in terms of what packaging materials, some of the vaccines candidates are looking at. What is the transportation conditions for some of the candidates? And also on the distribution model, are they looking at point-to-point, hub and spoke? How are they distributing? So there's still a long list of unknowns for us to, even though we are all getting ready and prepared based on scenario planning, but with more information, it will really help us, to be ready and plan whatever that is necessary, right, to make this a success. So I would say transparency and open communication, I think is critical and is paramount.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I think there'll be a big sigh of relief once the detail and how it's going to be distributed, and the points you touched on there about whether it's going to be point to point, whether how much is going to be trucked, how much is going to then have to be redistributed with regional carriers or even private aviation, who knows, but it has to get to everybody, because at the end of the day, we're all only safe when everybody's safe.
Yes, and then in recent weeks, right, I mean, there have been a lot of speculation regarding air freight capacity, right? I mean, some say 8,000, some say high 100, some say more than 10,000. I think the truth of the matter is we really do not know, exactly. Right? Until we have clarity on all the parameters, then we can do our own calculations.
Exactly, yeah. And people don't even know, how many shots will be contained, and that multiplies or divides, so there's yes. Unknowns. But that we're all waiting for that sigh of relief. So yeah, very good. And Swan. Sorry, Swan.
Yeah. From an airline perspective, I think I definitely agree with what JZ has just covered. So I'm just going to add on some points to it. I think for us, it'll be also about having the capacity and being ready. we obviously have the scheduled freighters and passenger flights on board, but we also can operate charters, either using our freighters as well as our passenger aircraft on cargo. And on that front, what we have also done is we are trying to, we are also looking, more news are coming up, right, in the last few days and weeks. And I think, while there were a lot of unknowns, I think increasingly it becomes clearer that there will be certain points that, the vaccines will be coming from. And some of this may not be our online points today. So we have done some preempting and, in terms of looking at these offline points, maybe appointing, doing security audits and clearance, appointing ground handling agents in these countries. So when the vaccines are ready and when we finally know where we are going to uplift this vaccine from, we could very quickly, operate the flight and be ready to help to carry the vaccines to the people of the world. Just from my perspective.
Yeah, no, very, very good, very good. And Daniel?
On this point, Chris, I think in Singapore, actually, I'm very glad that Changi Airport has taken that lead together, everybody together, so that we can work together to ensure that seamless handling of the vaccine. I think someone has to take the lead, and I'm very glad that Changi Airport has taken the lead, and everybody is supporting that. And on the point of transparency, I think I also want to emphasize on sharing. There could be transparency, but if there's no sharing, then that information do not get across to everybody, and therefore we are not on the same page. So that's important. So for SATS, again, another thing that we have done, which I mentioned earlier, we have cargo facilities in 13 other locations other than Singapore, in 9 different countries. So internally, we are also coordinating the sharing of vaccine information, so that at the end of the day, the objective is to bring every one of our facility in the SATS network to the same level of readiness in terms of for the vaccine handling.
Yeah, very, very good. And I think in the future, when people look back, there's a lot of things that people will want to carry on beyond what we've learned now. And so many people have had the chance, like you said, catch up on your training, re-endorse the importance of training, doing audits, looking at your SOPs, LOPs, making sure that they're effective, task forces, getting together, having airports more involved in supporting cargo, because there's a newfound respect for cargo. So all of those things coupled together. Just can I ask you one last question before we finish the podcast, a little bit of a one in the air. If you had a magic wand, or you were able to wish for something really positive to remain after we've got rid of all this legacy of waste, and please God, when the business starts to come back again and our colleagues get their jobs back, what would you like to see last way beyond people talking about the unprecedented times during the COVID crisis? What would they be? Who wants to go first?
I can take a shot.
Okay.
Yeah, go on then. Where you go, Daniel?
Well, I think I hope that the added spirit of collaboration will last beyond the COVID-19 pandemic, because that's very important. And the other part of it is really the sharing of information, be it through digitalization or through systems integration. I think that is also something that I hope will last beyond this current pandemic, because that is truly important for us in terms of moving to the next phase of cargo development.
Yep, very good, very good. Swan? Yeah, I think I was just going to say that very much the same thing, really unprecedented transparency, sharing, and and that's really good, and alignment of interest, and I think this is something that we hope will last, and I think we will in Singapore, because people have come together and we have learned that working together, being transparent, sharing adding actually adds value to everybody here, right? Because we all rely on each other to be successful.
Yeah, I think that's the wonderful thing about being in a team is, being happy that you're in a team, being happy with the position you're in the team, and not trying to hide or tell other people in those positions how and what they should be doing. It's so important now that the team of aviation become so strong as we move out of this. So, yeah, thank you very much, Swan.
And we get to know each other better as well.
Pardon?
And I think it's also an opportunity for all parties to get to know each other even better.
Exactly, exactly. Yep, 100%. And Jay-Z?
Yeah, I do echo what Daniel has mentioned, but from my own personal standpoint, if I may add, right, I really hope that out of this crisis, that we will all remember the significance and the role that air cargo has played in this crisis. I think in the last couple of months, right, I've seen not just ourselves, but really when I look at other stakeholders, right, that is, cargo has taken more significance, I would say, in boardroom decisions. I think CXOs, all the leaders are giving more attention to cargo. I have seen certain projects being accelerated. I have seen, there are more cargo initiatives on a global basis, being initiated. And I really do hope that, people will remember the value and the significance that air cargo continue to play in order to restart as well as to enable our economies forward.
I think very well said. And Jay-Z, thank you for those last words. Thank you, Swan. Thank you, Daniel. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking with people from Singapore. I've always enjoyed my time there. Well done for what you've done, and really appreciate your time taken with us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
See you soon.
Yeah.